Hey, welcome back to the thing. Dreamtime 4, the fourth in like a Dreamtime series, kind of like a random sort of podcast storytelling thing that I like to do once in a while, once every few months, specifically after I've had a really impactful dream. Some of them were culled from the past, but a couple of them have been very recent. And I had one recently that I wanted to share. And yes, we all have our own interpretations of our own dreams, and that's the way it should be, because we have our own symbols and our own psyches and whatever. But sometimes there's some universal stuff happening, and sometimes when you're too close to something, it's harder to interpret. And I thought I'd share this one because I would welcome your thoughts on its meaning. Some things might be obvious and other symbols might not be, and I'd love to get your input on this and share a few more things before we're done. It's not going to be that long. I know people's dreams are boring, so I will try to keep this relatively concise. So I remember falling into a bit of a fitful sleep. It was very restless, but then suddenly I am plunked down. I'm sure some of you have had this situation as well. I'm plunked down into a darkened hallway. And it's a very, very long hallway. There are shadows in the hallway. And I had this immediate awareness that I was in school. It was high school, but of course it was heightened and it was surreal. And I had to get to class as quickly as possible. But also I had this urge to get out. Like, I was missing on a test. There was a test I was supposed to do, and I needed to get into class before I got in trouble. That something important was happening. But at the same time, though I wanted to get to those classes, or that class, that test, I could see the shadows of students going into doors, and they looked miserable. They looked frightened, like they didn't want to be there. But they also wanted to get out of the hallways too, because something bad would happen. And I began to run through these hallways, and that's when I really knew that it was kind of my high school, or at least a representation of it from my dreams, because of the colors of the lockers down the hallway. Faded blue, which was from the old building in Sutton District High School that I went to back in the day. And the doors were large and wooden without windows. And the walls were kind of beige, and the floors were this like kind of speckled large tile thing with like thin metal bands between the tile. And I was running down the hall and couldn't find the right door. And then I ran up a set of stairs, metal railings, stone, concrete steps, and I knew that I was being followed, that I had to hurry. This was the most important thing. I had to hurry, but I didn't want to stay. And I got to a set of stairs and I had the choice to go up or down, and I went up. I felt like that was the most important thing of all, that I had to keep going up, that I couldn't descend. Kind of an obvious symbol. But as I went up, the stairs kept getting more and more narrow. It became harder to navigate. The turns around the stairs going up and turning, almost like spiral staircases at this point. And at last, after several floors of hunting and running and seeing frightened and disconcerted looking students around me, some faces I vaguely remember, but most kind of without too much detail, I emerged into a very wide hallway, but though I had gone up, it felt like I had gone underground because of the lighting. It was flickering fluorescence. There was one window at the end of the hall, but the light looked unnatural, like it was twisting, and it was shafts of blue and red, and then all of a sudden just this cold white beam. And I saw a figure in that light walking towards me, the shadowy silhouette of something. And I knew that this was it. I had to get by this thing. I had to avoid it somehow. It was a threat. It was like, every bully I'd ever experienced somehow fused into one. It was giant and lurking and looming. And it took these long strides towards me, became thin and elongated, and I just pressed my back against the wall and slid by it. And as it walked by, it kind of turned its face towards me, and its face was completely blank, like the character The Question from the comic books. It was just like a mask pulled over its face with nothing. Or like Neo in the first Matrix, Mr. Anderson with his mouth sealed shut. Well, same for the eyes and the nose, just a sealed face and straggly black hair. And it kind of reached towards me, and I turned to go up one more set of stairs. It was a very, very narrow stairway with no railings, like the top of a lighthouse or something. And then I pushed through into darkness, but emerged from that darkness in kind of a completely different setting. This is when I first started to realize that I was dreaming. In fact, no, sorry, I missed something. That as this character reached towards me, and I was terrified, I suddenly realized that I was dreaming. And as soon as you realize that you're dreaming and become fully aware or relatively lucid in the moment, you can choose to manipulate what's happening in the dream. Or if you can't do that, which I couldn't, you can just go, I want to wake up now. And that's what I did. I said, I need to wake up now. And I forced myself awake. But it was only for a moment. Have you ever had that? Where you pull yourself out of a dream, but you still feel like you're half in the dream world, and you're in your bed and you know where you are, and you know you're trying to wake up, but you don't fully wake up either? Like you're in this strange, warm, fluid, out of time and space place. And that was where I was in my bed here in this house, in the room over there. And I said, okay, I'm safe. Even though I can't fully wake up, I still feel like the gravity of the dream pulling me back underwater. That's what it felt like. But I decided to go back in. And as I went back in, it was almost just this completely continuous experience of pulling myself out and then going back in. I ended up emerging from the darkness with my eyes closed into this warm and inviting room. And this inviting room felt like a dorm room from university with multiple bunk beds. And I looked down and I was wearing clothes from university, a sweater and, casual jeans, ripped jeans, I think. And I saw hands working up and down the jeans and the shirt, and I was definitely in a good mood because I was surrounded by a bevy of young ladies. And it felt like one of those late nights in university that some of us have been blessed or cursed to have, where it was like a truth or dare kind of night, and it was late and we were drinking and having fun. And I knew that I was happy to be there, and I was really happy to be indulging with these beautiful young girls. But at the same time, I also felt guilty. I felt guilty because there was something else I was supposed to be doing, but I couldn't remember what it was. Again, I knew that there was a clock counting down, that I was on the verge of missing something or doing something important. And suddenly, as things were getting pretty undressy, let's put it politely, the door to the dorm room opens up, this big wooden door, again a wooden door, and in enters a woman, older, bobbed hair, wrinkles, piercing blue eyes, dark hair, badly done makeup, more formal looking. It was like she was the head of a university department or a professor or the head of the dorm or all in one. And she just looked at me with such disappointment, like, you're late, you're making me look bad, what are you doing here? This is not the way you should be using your time. And so then I threw on my clothes quickly, apologized, said I'd be back as soon as possible, realized the importance of the moment, and picked up my bags. I think one of my bags, there was something I left behind in the room that was important. And I followed this woman down a brick hallway, and then it emerged through the set of double doors, black doors, into the top of like a lecture hall, like maybe like a 500 or 750 seat lecture hall, kind of darkened, a few lights in the back were on, and it was crowded, and there was a big screen down below. And I couldn't make out the writing, but it looked like it was my name, and I realized, oh shit, I have this massive, really important presentation that would affect my grades, would affect my career, that I was being brought here as an expert to speak. It was like, again, a fusion of all these different time frames and experiences I've had in the past. And there were people in these back rows going, Brooke, where have you been? Like, you're due up now. You've been waiting for this. There were friends from the island here. There were some people from my time in Vancouver working in media. There were a few folks from the earlier years from high school and university, mentors, friends. No one unfriendly, but they were all concerned. And the lady looks at me and said, what did you forget? And I'm like, oh crap, I left the other bag back in the girls' room. I'm just gonna run just down the hall, grab it, I'll be right back ready for the presentation. Now, I'm sure you guys understand dream logic. Like, I understand dream logic, where when you like leave a room and head back into a hallway or go from one place to another, you rarely end up having a linear experience. And this is exactly what happened. As soon as I ended up in the hallway started twisting and turning. I forgot what the lecture hall was. I'm like, okay, I'll go around from this building to the other entrance, and I open up like, two big metal and glass doors reminiscent of university and high school, or some sort of institutional building like a hospital. And I open up the doors and I end up out in like the quad. And instead of being like flat grass and cement walkways, it kind of evolved into these rolling hills. And the sky looked like it was like red and almost on fire. And on the rolling hills, these kind of plains ended up stretching out to a large dark forest in the back. There were monsters, like large monsters lumbering, not paying any attention to me. They were like stepping on cars, and there were dinosaurs. And then again, stepping on cars, the dragon blowing fire. It was all these things that I knew I needed to avoid, but they didn't seem so strange. I was like, oh shit, I gotta get by these guys. And I've got to get around them and over those two hills. And the only way, I can't go back in these doors because now it's a brick wall, and that makes complete sense to me. But I need to get around to the administration building because that's the hub of this, what I assume to be university. So I work my way, I hide, I hustle down, I dig a trench, I get around things, I go between a pair of legs, monster legs, like a Godzilla or something crazy like that. And I come up a set of steps, which are all like crumbling, but I see these two large blue doors that I know to be the entranceway, the main hub, the portal back into this school, this place. And that's when the first, other than the demon from the earlier part of the dream, that's when something really weird happened. So I open the doors and I step into this, the front room, the antechamber, the portal, the whatever, between another set of doors, and all of a sudden, the doors behind me, the walls beside me, the ceiling overhead, and the doors in front all transform into these multicolored kaleidoscope fractal kind of panels. And I don't usually have psychedelic dreams like this, only when I, have taken psychedelics. Okay? And everything becomes psychedelic. Now, I don't feel discomfort or dis-ease. I don't feel nausea. I don't feel fear. What I feel is frustration as I'm trying to push through this and slide these maze-like walls to get to the doors, to get inside, to get to my presentation, which is now late, and I'm going to suffer for it, or get in trouble for it, or lose something important for it. But I'm lost. And I keep trying to move through. It starts to feel like this weird late-night game of laser tag where you're going through a dark maze and there are, trippy lights happening. It's for the stoner kids playing laser tag at midnight. But again, it's very, very psychedelic. Blues and reds, kaleidoscopes, fractal colors. And, but like LED panels, very modern, very Mandalorian, if you've seen how they shoot that. And I finally just said, fuck it. I can't get in this way. I've got to go back. And as soon as I made the choice to turn around, the doors just opened up behind me. The psychedelic walls were gone, and I stepped out. And there's the crumbled staircase back down into the quad. But it's nighttime, and I see that there is this like large road, like a highway, multi-lanes, coming through the quad, jammed with cars honking at each other and people yelling at each other, people with guns, and I'm kind of like ducking and trying not to get noticed by anyone. And it really felt, the sky was also like stormy, there was lightning, and it seemed cliche, but it really felt post-apocalyptic, like something horrible had happened in the world. Again, I wasn't afraid of what was happening in the world. There were just specific moments and circumstances, like when I tried to inch between the cars, now at the end of the dream, and there was a man, a cliche almost, like a wife beater and a bit of a cigar and like a semi-automatic, and he was threatening a woman and their child, and I stepped in, and he was aiming the gun at me and yelling, started firing into the air. And then I was just like, no, I couldn't make it inside, and I'm not going to make it back, and there's nothing left for me here. And I woke up. So this wasn't like the other dreams where I was left with a sense of being disturbed, per se, or deeply saddened, or moved, or inspired, but there's still, it still felt like there was an important seed in this, an important nugget of knowledge. Now, my quick interpretation would be, okay, when you have dreams about being forced to go back to school, which I've had throughout my life, like, oh, I missed this one history class and I didn't deserve to get my degree, so I'm 35 and need to go back to being like 16 years old in like grade 11 history and pass it before I'm allowed to leave. Going back to school usually means, at least from a Jungian perspective, that there's something you haven't yet learned. There's something that is a stage in your mental or emotional or spiritual development that you're stuck in. So that would be tied to the high school stuff, and I felt like the shadowy bully demon characters, like I'm still maybe tied to that, to those threats, to something I didn't quite complete or let go of there, hence the facelessness of this thing, a concept more than a specific person. And then in university, right, instead of doing my important lecture or presentation, I was more distracted by the girls. So again, going back to school and being stuck in this way of thinking, being stuck in the connection to a romantic ideal or a physical connection, right? The addictions that we have. And then leaving school and being out in the world in this realm of monsters and demons and dinosaurs, which I found fascinating. Maybe that's tied to the creative work out in the world that I'm supposed to be doing or have been doing. And then when I tried to go back into school, i.e. to accomplish the thing I thought I was supposed to accomplish, there was this psychedelic veil, this barrier, this maze that I couldn't get through. And if you've had a psychedelic experience before, it's kind of like you are piercing this veil of knowledge. You have to go through an ego death to get the great knowledge, to achieve the great thing, to transcend your current state. But I couldn't do it. And instead I emerged back out into the world, which had fallen apart. It was post-apocalyptic. So all I can think is that maybe there is something that I still have yet to do, that I've failed to do, that is waiting to be done before I am allowed back into the college, the invisible college, the place of true knowledge, before I'm allowed to graduate. I don't know. That's just my thought. What do you think? What do you think of that wackadoo dream? Have you had similar? Do you have some ideas, solutions, perspectives? They're welcome. But I will say this before I go, because this is going to be included on the podcast too, that I'm going to keep doing as I'm working on making the Buddha and the Slut best of with some new stories and what have you. People keep asking in private messages and DMs, in my DMs, it's been a while. What have you been working on? And yes, it's NaNoWriMo coming up, and I'll be continuing on the book series, long overdue for a reason. And it's hard during pandemic to get stuff going. You gotta hustle, and I'm just trying to survive and keep my head above water. But there is one project, one creative thing very close to my heart that I've been working on in relative secrecy for a couple of years now. And it's coming. Soon-ish. Early next year. I won't say anything about it yet, other than to point out that, as professionals say these days, sometimes you got to pivot, go with a different skill, try something new, take a big risk, show a different side of yourself. And this will be that. Absolutely will be that. And for those of you who did follow the podcast and remember my bucket list 2020 before my birthday, before the big 5-0, which, again, thank all of you for your kind words and support. I know it's October now, end of, almost Halloween, but back in June, so many of you were so kind as to say it again. You've helped to keep my head above water as I'm locked down here in Southeast Asia, because travel's hard and living's harder. But I made a bucket list podcast of things I wanted to do before I died. And there were a few things on that list that I said had fairly decent odds of happening. Well, next spring-ish, if not a little bit earlier, you'll see what I meant by that. So, thanks for being out there, for staying in touch, and in your own way for giving me reasons just to keep going and keep communicating and keep sharing, because that's my love language. As I say to all my friends and peers and family and anyone who will listen, communication and connection and storytelling and sharing ideas is what makes life worth living for me. So, thanks. And I hope you'll do the same. I genuinely want to hear about you. So, do tell. And more soon. Happy Halloween. Sorry this wasn't scarier, but life's scary enough right now. Cheers.